So what's entailed with the furnace cleaning? I often get asked that question. So I'm gonna show you what a normal furnace cleaning actually consists of by a qualified technician. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to turn the thermostat on to have the furnace kick in.
Just taking the lid off and
fine. Now I already cranked the thermostat up. I just turned the power off so it wasn't producing unnecessary heat while so I'm going to turn that power switch back on. And as you can see right now, the furnace is kicking in. Is what we want to happen. So I'm just taking the lid off and see that the furnace is firing on all cylinders right now. This is a mid-efficient furnace. So it's pretty good furnace, but I do have high pressure right now. This is the mid-efficient right? We're fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the panel for the blower part. There is a safety kill switch here, and that's as soon as I pull this panel out, it's going to turn the whole furnace off. Okay, so now I got my blower compartment exposed. So the whole furnace now is just turned off. And the reason for that is because, again, this is your power switch right here. This kill switch was furnace would kick in again, as you can see right now. But I don't want that to happen right now. And for added security, I too like to turn it off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, before I do any maintenance or cleaning on the furnace, I want to inspect the heat exchanger. That is by far one of the most important parts of the furnace, because if the heat exchanger is somehow cracked or damaged, theoretically you could get carbon monoxide. Now I've never actually seen that happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've personally never seen that. I've seen it more so with venting issues. It's more of a legal reason why we have to check the exchanger. Okay, so what I'm going to do to check the heat exchanger is right through the plenum. There's no air conditioning in this furnace, so that actually helps me out a lot. If there is an air conditioning in this furnace, the coil would be sitting up here in the plenum, and it can make it sometimes more difficult to check through this way, but I find this is the best way to check a heat exchanger, because you get to actually look right down at it. And how to do that is that there has already been a hole made here. Actually, I did this last year when I was cleaning this furnace, so I could take a look down. So I'm just going to open that hole up again, and I'm just going to use my multi-tool here. And all I'm going to do now is just take a peek inside. As you can kind of see, that's what the heat exchanger looks like. And really what we're looking for is anything that screams there's a crack, right? With these furnaces here, typically the biggest problem is these eyelets. I don't know if you can see. I'm going to try to zoom in. These eyelets right here, it's not so much a problem with the mid-efficient furnaces, it's more so with the high-efficient, but I've seen it with these mid-efficient furnaces. What will happen is cracks will actually start to form around them, or what more happens than not is the eyelet itself, that little shiny piece of circle there, will actually fall out. And once that happens, that's considered a crack in your furnace. So if you ever hear anybody saying, oh, your eyelet has fallen out, or there's a crack around your eyelet, that's what they're talking about. That's pretty much one of the biggest things that happens with furnaces that have those eyelets that keep them together. That's their weak point. So again, it's more of a problem with I find with the high efficient furnaces. So that's one way to tell or to check to see how the heat exchanger is. There's another way to do it too, and it's going through your high limit. You can pull that out, but in this case, because everything is squished in, it's actually pretty difficult to actually do that. I have done that with this furnace again last year, but I couldn't really see anything doing it that way. We also have inspection cameras too. If I couldn't see, if I couldn't get in through the plenum, and I needed to inspect the heat exchanger, I would pull that high limit out and stick my camera in there just to see if I could see anything that way. But another way to do it too is to actually pull this whole motor out and just crawl in there and look up. Okay, so now that I've checked my heat exchanger and I know that my heat exchanger is good to go, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pull this guy here, and what this is your flame sensor or your flame rod. I'm just going to pull this guy out. And you'd be surprised in how often this is the reason why a service call is called for. I get lots of complaints because of that. So it's a real issue, and it's really simple to sort out. And just doing regular maintenance on your furnace really helps out a lot. So that's kind of what it looks like right there. It's a little dirty too, you can tell. I'm going to sort that out right now. I'm going to sort that out right now. And these guys can be a pain for you, the homeowner, because they're not anything spectacular really, and if they're not cleaned, they will turn your furnace off. You'll think there's a bigger problem than there actually is. Your furnace will come on, and then it'll turn itself off, it'll relight itself, and it might stay on, and you're going to be like thinking, okay, well, what's going on here? And then over time, if you allow it to go, continue doing what it's doing, what's going to happen is it's eventually just going to not come on at all, or it's just going to lock itself out, because this flame sensor, this flame rod is dirty, and that's it. That's the only reason why your furnace is acting like the way it would be acting. A lot more clean, as you can see. So I'm gonna stick this guy back in. Before I do, I'm just gonna take a quick look at the burners. Burner ports. So I'm just going to stick this guy back in. Do that. So how I pull my blower motor is I'm gonna take these two screws out, and what it does is it actually slides on a track that you can kind of see up here, and it will actually slide right out. Okay, so we got our motor somewhat pulled out here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to just give it a nice little clean. I'm able to access the motor part now. I'm going to plug my vacuum in, and I'm going to just give it a bit of a good clean there. What I will do now is I'm just going to take out your rag. I'm going to throw throw some pledge on that. I find that actually works pretty good. I mean, like I said, I cleaned this furnace last year and it was really dirty, and it still seems like it's still, the dirt's not really going on it, which is good. That's always a good thing. Some people don't do that, but that's okay. Just my little thing I like to do. I'll just kind of go around the whole assembly here, and I'll even come down to the blower compartment here and just give it a nice little wipe down. Again, this motor is pretty cleaned. I cleaned it last year and it still seems to be doing well, even in a dusty area like this. And make sure my wires are all good to go. That's another thing I like about doing a full cleaning, is that you get time to examine every wire and stuff, you know, just make sure everything's good to go. You know, you'd be surprised at how many loose wires I find this way. I'm not saying that they're gonna fall off, but you know, it's nice to get a good feel of the furnace that we're working on. It's our fuse. Every high and mid efficient furnace and even category furnaces will have some sort of a fuse. So that's pretty much that for the whole cleaning part of it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna test my gas flow through my manifold. I'm gonna just see if I'm sitting at 3.5, which is what we want to be at according to this furnace. And most furnaces, that's their happy zone. And we're gonna just double check with the faceplate here. Yeah, so if you can see that faceplate right here will actually tell me where it wants it, which is right here, 3.5. Manifold pressure. The case, because if it's firing above that, it could do damage to your heat exchanger. I've seen them as high as 5. We're just going to pull this cap. So I'm going to put my adapter on. Finger tight. I don't need to crank it in there. I'm going to stick my rubber hose here on. I'm going to turn my meter here on. I'm just going to zero it out. What I'm going to do now is I have to turn the furnace on in order to actually read gas flow out of my meter. So it's actually a little low. It's at 3.1. So I'm looking at 3.1 right now, so that's going to come up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to take this cap here off. So we're reading at 3.1, so I'm just going to go into here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do my final start up just to make sure everything is working good to go before I am good to say that this furnace is fine. I'm also going to do a carbon monoxide test because we want to make sure there's nothing leaking from the furnace. So I'm just going to stick this above where the plenum is. Got good flames. I'm just going to take a look at my carbon monoxide, just checking the venting, making sure there's nothing leaking from the exhaust, from the venting, which seems to be doing fine. And I actually find more problems with venting issues with carbon monoxide than I ever have with carbon monoxide leaking from the plenum. So I'm just going to put this over here. See, there's nothing leaking from the heat exchanger, which is what we want. So I'm happy with that. Nothing else seems to be leaking, so I am good with that.